right, hello, and welcome to the second episode of the Indiana Healthcare Executive Network podcast. My name's Ryan Fier, and I have the pleasure of serving on the Communications Committee with iHEN. For my day job, I am the administrator for the Pediatric Critical Care Division at Riley Children's Hospital at Indiana University Health. My pleasure to welcome you to our second episode. Yes, that's right, our second episode. If you missed our first episode, I highly recommend you going back and watching that on our website or on our YouTube channel. For our initial episode, we had a few of our board members, including our chair and our chair-elect, discuss the value that iHEN and ACHE provide at a very broad level. Today, I have a special guest with us, and we'll be discussing what I think will be a very interesting topic that I hope everyone will find some value in. Before we jump into that episode, I want to start by thanking our sponsors. They play a very important role in iHEN's success in creating and helping provide opportunities such as this here for all of our members. Our premier sponsor is Ice Miller, our platinum sponsor is Heapy, and our gold sponsors are Katz, Sapper & Miller, InnovCare, Cornerstone, and Arc Design. So let's dive into the topic of our second episode. Today we're going to talk about what great leaders have done to help grow their careers, and we'll highlight some of the specific resources that iHEN and ACHE are able to provide these individuals along their career journey as they grow and develop. Our goal for today is to build off of our first episode a little bit by getting some expert knowledge in leadership development and connecting that to how ACHE and iHEN fulfills their mission of advancing members and also healthcare leadership excellence. I think today's conversation will be applicable to everyone, no matter where you're at along on your career journey, whether that be as an early careerist or an MHA student to mid and senior level executives. The main reason why I think that this broad spectrum of healthcare professionals will benefit from today's content is because I am joined by an esteemed guest, and that is Sara Johnson. With that, I am going to hand it over to Sara to introduce herself and spend some time giving an overview of her career journey and leadership experience, including your involvement with iHEN and ACHE. So Sara, take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here and to see everyone. I've always enjoyed the opportunity to speak about leadership, as you know, and also have a strong relationship with ACHE and iHEN. So it's kind of a sweet moment for me to bring it all together. My background, many of you know me as a professor at the Fairbanks School of Public Health. Prior to that, I had a career that started in medical technology in healthcare, worked in a small hospital in Shelbyville, Indiana, and then moved to the big city and began working at St. Vincent for about 25 years. I began and stayed for a while.
Wow.
But interestingly, my career path involved a variety of different roles at St. Vincent, and it started clinically, moved into IT, then I moved into clinical research, and then into organizational development and human resources. And that's really where I fell in love with the whole idea of studying leadership and leaders, and grew to develop an understanding that effective organizations really were a product of people who were in the right positions and were functioning at their highest level. So I really began to study leadership and have since come to Indiana University, not IU Health, Indiana University. People often get confused with that. To teach in health administration and also to do executive education. I run the executive education program for the O'Neill School. I'm a clinical associate professor there and have the opportunity to have over 40 faculty and staff that I work with that teach leadership. Our goal and our mission is to provide leadership development for the state of Indiana, the country, and now we're internationally oriented with some of our leadership programs. So it is what I do every day, and I teach leadership, executive leadership, and organizational behavior to graduate students and executives throughout the world now. So pleasure to be here, and my favorite topic to talk about.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. You want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved with iHEN and some of the roles you took there, and then eventually with ACHE?
Absolutely. I actually was pre-iHEN. I was here prior to the creation of chapters at ACHE, and so was helpful in developing iHEN as a chapter for ACHE. I've been involved with ACHE since I was a grad student at Indiana University and became a student member back in the late 80s. Hate to say it, but that's true. And began to be involved with ACHE both as a student, and then I tried to participate where I could on any committees that were available as I moved through membership levels, and have stayed active with the local chapter. As far as ACHE more broadly, I've been on several committees over the years, and I always encourage committee membership with ACHE because that's really how you get engaged and understand a lot about the organization and the great resource that it is. Was fortunate to be elected regent for Indiana, and so served the state of Indiana as a liaison to the national ACHE body. And then after that was elected to the Board of Governors and served on the ACHE board for 3 years, and that was a tremendous experience. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in pursuing true engagement at the highest level with ACHE to look for those elected positions because they are great for your career development as well. And you will meet a lot of great leaders and learn from a lot of really experienced people that do some top-notch work around the country. So I've had lots of opportunities with ACHE and have been very fortunate to have been in the roles that help lead the organization and influence over 48,000 people that are members of ACHE.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's an astonishing career so far that you've had as an educator, as a coach, and as a leader as well. So I'm super excited now to even pick your brain even a little bit more and having this opportunity and glean insights from our discussion here. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll jump in here now. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be discussing what great leaders can do to grow their careers and what iHEN and ACHE can help provide to those individuals as they're going along their career journey here. For today, I want to break our discussion into kind of 3 different high-level components here. The first one will be about understanding your personal purpose and values. The second component will be around investing in yourself, and the third will be around networking. So, Sarah, let's start with the personal purpose and values here. I want to start with just a very simple question here. What are personal values?
Well, that sounds simple. You're right. That's a simple question. But
Trick question.
Personal values, I honestly think a lot of people don't understand what they are and where they originate. And so your values are really what guide your behavior. And so it is really important to understand what your values are and know the impact that understanding values can have on leadership and the way you act as a leader. And the values are the things that really are at your core, what you stand for. We think in terms of integrity. We think in terms of maybe family orientation and some of the just core values that people have. You can look at lists of values and identify some that you resonate with and others that maybe aren't as high priority. And those values actually can change over time depending upon where you are in your career. You have core values, but some things become more important to you over time. I know if you're paying off student loans, financial security is more prominent perhaps than it would be later when you're more established in your career or something like that. So really it's the values are what are established within you from a variety of different orientations, such as family, the environment that you work in, and they're deeply embedded. And so studying them and understanding them is critically important, I think, for leaders.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I think you're spot on there with there's an evolution to it, right? That you're not always, you don't have the same values are not always the most important to you throughout your career or throughout your life, and it just kind of depends on the moment. And as you become more experienced, you figure out who you are more as a person as well, and become more and more self-aware. So
That's true.
that's a very good point. And want to talk too a little bit about more around the work environment. And as a leader, these values are very important, and your leadership style and how effective you can be as a leader. If you could, can you kind of touch on a little bit of why that's so important? I think a lot of people lose sight of that and the value of having specific values there.
Hmm. Well, as I said earlier, I think it's important because it affects your behavior and it drives your behavior. And so if you don't have strong or solid values, you can be, I want to say wishy-washy, but you can be less consistent in your behavior. And so understanding what's at your core and building your leadership style around that is very important. So it's important because it drives behavior, and behavior is what other people see, and behavior is what other people respond to in the workplace. And so if you are not sure of your values and maybe act differently at different times, then people can't count on you as a leader and don't know for sure what's coming into the office that day, for example. And so consistency is a big part of what individuals look for in leadership, and having clear values and building your work around those and your leadership around those is impacts a lot of different people because that's what they see. And so I think successful leaders spend time thinking about their values and assessing and being reflective in how they keep their self-awareness strong. I think that's a critical component of leadership, and I'll talk more about that later probably, but that's a piece that I think is very important, is the self-awareness. And so part of that is understanding your own values and building your work style around that.
Yeah, I think you were kind of alluding to it a little bit, but if you know your values, it's very important to lead with your values, right? You don't want to hold those in, even if you do know them. It provides a sense of transparency to the team that you're leading,
Right.
and it provides that consistency there as well. Now, values as well, generally organizations have values, and it's probably important that your values also align with the organization's values. From your experience, what can you tell us about if they don't align? What are generally the outcomes, or what would you recommend to somebody if personal values don't align with organizational values?
Yeah, that's sometimes a challenge for individuals, especially. I think the effect can be that you're not happy at your work and you have a sense of something not being, not right. And a lot of times that is the fact that your values aren't aligned with the organization's values, or perhaps even your immediate supervisor or your leader's personal values. There may be conflict. I think that is one thing, to be able to have a conversation, honestly, with someone that you might report to if there's some sort of conflict around values. That can be risky, but I believe that that one is easier to have a conversation about than looking at large organizational values that have been set for a period of time by a number of people.
Yep.
And so having a conversation, if you feel a values disconnect with a leader or a supervisor, I think is an important step to take. Though you may be taking a risk, but it's a good dialogue to have.
It is.
If you are not aligned with your organization, you'll feel it, and you may not know that's what it is, but in fact, the misalignment is something that causes people to be unhappy in their work. And my recommendation is, if you find that out, then you might want to start looking for an organization where you are more aligned with the values. I do a program for emerging leaders at the university, and that's one of the questions that I ask is, are your values aligned with those of the university, or do you even know what those values are? What are the stated values? And some people don't know what they are, and when they start looking at them, they're like, well, maybe that's why, I'm feeling what I'm feeling. So it's really part discovery that misalignment can create stress in the workplace, and it's important to think about. I recommend people really look around to find something that fits. And I even recommend, if you're going into a first job, that's one of the things that you study before you take a position. What are those values? Are they consistent with what you believe your values are? and to look at that earlier than later when maybe there's a disconnect that you could have known about beforehand.
Yeah, that's great advice there, and I think the happiness piece is a huge component.
We spend a lot of time at work.
We do spend a lot of time at work, and it's actually been an interesting thing that I've been exploring myself is the impact of values on happiness. And you look back too of with the pandemic, there's a lot of change going on, and everybody wants change. Nobody wants change to impact them, and nobody wants to lead the change, right? And leading change is hard, and to be able to do that, you have to stick to your core values, and that helps out. It prevents the burnout that you were kind of alluding to there as well. So that's all great advice. Now, say somebody doesn't know what their personal values are yet, or haven't spent the time to be introspective or reflect on that. How would you recommend somebody going about trying to figure out what their own personal values are?
Yeah, well, you put on a couple of key terms, introspection and reflection.
Yeah.
I would suggest really asking people, if you were to come to me, Ryan, and say, how could I determine what my values are? I would challenge you to really think about what's important to you and really to have some reflective time around that. What is important to you? What is it that, gets you up in the morning and keeps you happy throughout the day? And it's not all about happiness, but certainly that's a piece of it, is especially when you're looking for alignment. But if you don't know, spend some time reflection. There are things that you can do assessments, online assessments. I know ACHE has a tool, the Career Anchors tool, that you can participate in and determine what your values might be. So there are some assessments that can be utilized. And part of it, I think, too, is just really stepping back and asking yourself what is important. And you mentioned the pandemic. A lot of people have reassessed what's important to them and have made some big changes in career. It's like, I'm not going to work 80 hours a week anymore. So I think the value there is I want to spend more time doing things important to me. And sometimes you figure that out the hard way, but you can look introspectively and just identify what's important to you, or you can do some assessments to determine what those are. One of the things that I have in a class that I teach is an assessment for values. And we actually spend some time and look at where do those values come from and why is it important to you. So you can do it both technically and also introspectively.
Great. That's great. Yeah, I've not used the ACHE resource, but that's definitely something I'm going to have to check out here because I've solely relied on introspection. So it would be nice to get a different perspective there.
Yeah, that's one of the things I will say. ACHE has done a lot of focus. I know when I was on the board, we spent a lot of time really fleshing out a lot of the career edge product and the services that come along with that. And so ACHE is a great resource for that. And I would recommend, if someone doesn't really know where to get started, that's a great place to start, to look at some of the assessments that are available on Career Edge, the product that they have for career development.
Awesome. And if I may put a plug in here, ACHE Congress is coming up here in March. It will be, let's see here, look at my dates, March 27th to the 31st. And Sarah will actually be giving a lecture there. It will be titled Building Your Leadership Communication Strategy Around Personal Values. So that's on Monday, by the way, the 28th from 10 to 11:30. Make sure you sign up for it. But would you mind telling us a little bit what that's going to be? Give us a little preview here.
Yeah, when I was on the ACHE board, I worked with a great colleague, Dave Schreiner, who is the CEO at Catherine Shaw Bethea Hospital in Illinois. And Dave and I have had a synergy around leadership for a while and have talked about doing something like this. And so Dave is finishing his PhD and has done a lot of research around executive communication. And he and I were talking about the connection between values and communication. And so we will be focusing on what are your personal values as it relates to then how that impacts communication. And so it's actually a workshop, not a lecture. I don't lecture.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
I like that even better.
And so it'll be an interactive workshop where
Great.
Participants will have an opportunity to look at their values with an assessment. And then we will show some of the research that Dave has done in hospitals around effective CEO communication. And so we'll both have some working time, and then Dave will present some research. And we'll actually, I hate to give this away, spoiler alert, you will leave with a personal values statement. So we'll ask people to actually develop a personal values statement as part of the workshop.
Okay.
So a very tangible exercise that you can take with you and really reflect on and keep in front of you as you do your work.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
You still need to come, though. You know, that
Yeah.
that was just the preview. There's a lot more. It'll be a lot better in person.
That's great. That's great. So I think that's, to kind of sum up our conversation here, the values are extremely important for a leader to become a great leader, and also to, continue to develop and grow one's career here. It directly translate into success if you're able to leverage these values well through transparency, and it fulfills your own bucket as well, if you will. However, moving into the next part of invest in yourself, right? You've got your values and they act as like a guiding compass or guiding principles, but from a metaphor standpoint, if you're trying to climb a mountain here, you've got the direction you need to go. Sometimes you need to also have a plan or a path that you're going to follow here. You can't just walk in a certain direction and hope that everything's going to go well. So moving into the invest yourself part here, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about 3 subcomponents, if you will. We'll start with, kind of career planning and how that can help somebody become a great leader and grow their career. And then we'll kind of dive into personal development, professional development. And then the third will be continuous learning. So the third will be continuous learning for us here. So to start, let's start with the career plan.
Mm-hmm.
Career plans are sometimes very difficult. Somebody may have just this idea of like, oh, I want to be in such and such role at some point. But it's not as concrete as we would like. And so I guess, somebody starting out who may not clearly know what their career plan is or where they want to end up, what advice would you give them on how to start kind of try to figure that out?
Yeah, that's always a kind of a puzzling question to me. I had no career plan, and I do recognize the value of a career plan. I had a very circuitous, meandering along, if you will, in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that really helped me, and it was part of a plan that I didn't recognize at the time, was to take advantage of any opportunity that came my way. And so once you get started, you may not have a clue. It's kind of like your first year at college. You think you know what you want to major in, but you really don't end up doing that at all. And that can happen in healthcare administration as well. You have a place that makes sense where you start. I just encourage exploration and taking special opportunities to figure out really what you want to do, because it may not be very clear initially. There's so many different things that we can do in our profession, and to take opportunities to explore, I think will really help you set a plan. I would say exploration should be part of the plan, and to be able to avail yourself to committee work and to talking with people throughout an organization or even throughout other organizations. One of the things, we're really siloed in healthcare. I think we all know that, and we're sometimes reluctant to talk to our counterparts within other healthcare organizations, but it's really helpful, I think, to step out of an organization and network with other individuals and really help that inform what plan you might develop. It's great to have a 5-year plan and say, here's where I'd like to be at a certain time, and then say, this is what it's going to take for me to get there. And if you don't know what it's going to take, meet with someone who may be in a senior leadership role. Most senior leaders are very open to talking with early careerists or those that are just getting started. Typically, all you'll have to do is ask a senior leader one question, and then they'll talk for about 30 minutes. So, make sure you have a short list of questions. But yeah, getting feedback. If you think you know what you want to do, explore it, talk to other people doing that same type of job, and see if it really is what makes sense for you. It's a very iterative process. You have to work a plan. So I would say put a skeleton plan together and then do some exploration, talk to people, avail yourself to committees and special projects, and it will form sort of organically if you do things like that.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to
Yeah.
everything you just said there. Going into college, I wanted to be a healthcare provider, and I decided that probably wasn't the right route. Organic chemistry may have told me that itself, but
I understand that. That was my turning point as well.
so wanted to stay in healthcare, but iterative process, administration kind of came its way, and
Mhm.
as soon as I got out of undergrad, it was okay, healthcare administration. Let's try my MHA, and then I remember sitting down with somebody. What do you want to do with your MHA? Operations. Well, what does operations mean? Yeah, you got a lot of different types of
Yeah.
operations
Yeah.
within the system, right? And so, I view it as kind of a inverse triangle, if you will. Early on in your career, you want to keep the net wide here, and as you kind of go throughout your career, get different experiences, talk to different people, as you kind of mentioned, you'll kind of start narrowing that down and find your path. But the important piece is having some sort of a plan, even if you know it's not going to be perfect. And knowing it's not perfect is perfectly okay, right? So
I think the one key plan that I had was to always grow. And so therefore I took positions that I had no idea, Ryan, what I was doing. Absolutely no idea. And someone would say, "Would you, we think you'd be good for this." And I'd be like, my eyes are like this big, but at the same time go, "Yeah, I should try that." And so a hallmark of my plan was to always grow and to take on new opportunities. And I think that will carry you very far. I've been very fortunate to, I call it meandering, but I think if you keep in mind, I just want to continue to grow and look for those opportunities and take them when they come along. That is a hallmark of a good plan.
yeah, great advice right there. That's great advice. Um, so in thinking of a plan here, how would somebody go about constructing that plan? What does it look like? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Well, I think you want to take a look at just periods of time. You
Okay.
could say, in 30 years, I want to do this, but a lot of things in healthcare are going to change in 30 years. So I would say an iterative process, kind of like a strategic plan, really, and looking at it from the standpoint of maybe a 2 to 3 to 5 year, what do I want to accomplish? And then how do I go about accomplishing that? And who do I need to speak with to do that? I will have people do an exercise in my coaching to look at their personal network and just say, who do you know? And people start writing a network and they realize they know a lot of people. And
Mhm.
so it's, when was the last time you spoke with that person? And so developing a plan to reach out would be a part of that 2 to 3 to 5 years. And what are my strengths today? And where do I need to grow? And so looking again at your strengths and the opportunities you might have for growing and putting some steps together to get those experiences to grow. Let's just say you want to be a better public speaker because you want to be in senior leadership or even higher leadership or in a role that has a public facing experience and role, then go to a Toastmasters or participate in a community organization where you'll have a time where you can present
Mhm.
and really begin to do things, not necessarily in the job, but outside the job that can help you grow skills that will benefit you in the job.
Yeah.
So I would say part of that plan, you construct it with some timelines and then do sort of a gap analysis like you might do any planning process and just build the pieces to get to close that gap.
Yeah. I really like your call out of the timing. Only look a few years, maybe
Right.
5 years out, because it is going to change. I personally, use kind of the A3 model, A3
Mhm.
thinking model here with my career. I'm 5 years into my career now, so I've gone through at least one iteration a little bit, and you kind of put a goal in place. You explore, see if it's something you want, talk to people, but you got to then do a self-assessment of where am I at today? What skills do I have? What skills do I need to be able to reach that goal? And then, like you said, do that gap analysis and figure out, okay, I need to continue working on this. Maybe I'm good at it and I just need to enhance it. Or, hey, I really struggle in this area and I need to look for opportunities to develop in that area
Right.
to get where I want to be. And you can do that many, many different ways. And I know ACHE has quite a few resources out there to kind of help with that gap analysis. One of them being the competency assessment,
Mhm.
and I was going to discuss it later, but I remember in MHA school, that was one of the first things you gave us on the first day was the competency assessment. And do you want to kind of talk a little bit about that and the value of it and why you promote it so much?
Well, number one, I'm just impressed that you remembered what happened in your MHA class. You've been in your career for 5 years now, so the class was prior to that. So
Yes.
so good memory. Yeah, I do. I use that. I think it's important from a professional standpoint, and this is one of the things I like about ACHE. They're focused on professionalism and integrity and the values-based activity. And I think the competency assessment, one of the key, and we'll actually talk about this in our workshop. Dave and I are incorporating the competency assessment into that. But it talks about the core competencies of leaders, and we are in this business to lead the industry. And because of that, we have to maintain a set of competencies. And the one thing that I appreciate about ACHE is that we have at our disposal an assessment that is available to us. And I encourage people to do both the competency assessment as well as the ethics assessment annually. So those are two documents that are available to all members of ACHE. And I think it's important because we lose sight. We just lose sight. We get our head down, we're doing our work, and we don't really think about what are we doing and how are we doing it.
Right.
And so the competencies that they have are around communication, leadership, values, and it's just I think it's a great tool to use, and it is available. It's free. It's just a matter of putting it in your calendar to say, every December or every March or every whatever, I'm going to really pull that out and walk through it. And the thing that I've learned from it is my competencies will change, and some may slip because I haven't used those skills for a while, and it helps me know where to, go back and kind of beef up the work that I'm doing in that area. So I just think it's an effective tool, and it's relatively comprehensive, so it may take you a minute to do it, but it's very reflective in nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I would add to something that you said just a minute ago, too, was you said about really taking a look at what you want to do in the future. And you've been in your career now for 5 years, as you mentioned. So one of the things I would encourage people at your level, and even as you go further in your career, was to step back and say, how was I successful getting to where I am? So not only looking forward, but looking backward to look at what really helped you achieve what you did, and then leverage that. So that's probably something we don't do often enough. It's kind of like celebration. We don't celebrate our successes.
Yeah.
In healthcare, we're really not good at that. We're very thoughtful about the work that we do, but we don't often reflect on our successes. So I think that, and the competency assessment can help you actually look at where you have succeeded and where you're growing. So it's a great tool.
Yeah. I've used it quite frequently, so
Good.
I would
Glad to hear
concur.
it.
Yes. So with that, kind of wrapping up this little portion here of career planning and using competencies and finding gaps and stuff, just out of your experience from coaching and educating so many people, what are some of the one or two skills or qualities that you see separating good leaders from great leaders?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is humility. Humility, not always having to know all the answers. Great leaders utilize people that are smarter than them, and you have to be humble enough to do that. And so surrounding yourself with good people and recognizing that, when you get to be in even a more senior role, you can't know it all. There's just no way. There's too much. And so to be willing to be vulnerable and to trust other people to help get work done and to come up with great ideas. I think humility is a key piece of that. And being trustworthy would be another one. So I mentioned earlier, consistency. Individuals look for people that are consistent in their leadership. And so I would say consistency, which often is based on your values.
Yeah.
So those tie in very, very closely too. But being trustworthy and humble, those may sound like, really, shouldn't I be smarter at something else? You do have to do good work.
Right.
You have to be competent, as we say, which the competency assessment can help with. But from a character quality standpoint, I believe great leaders that I've known and worked with, and those that are very successful, are humble enough to know when they need to ask for help. someone to call me as an executive coach has to recognize, I want someone to help me grow. And that takes a form of humility to do that. And so those are a couple of key pieces for me would be humility and being trustworthy. And then I guess if there was one other one, I would say always do good work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's nice to be well liked and things like that, but you have to be competent and able to do the work that you're hired to do. So you can't just be nice and be trustworthy and not do quality work. Those all go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Which means you have to keep your skills up.
Right.
You have to keep your education up. You have to look for ways to continue to grow professionally. And again, I think that's where ACHE has been a great partner for me over the years, is always being a go-to for education and keeping me up to speed with all that's going on in such a changing environment.
Yeah, you got to have the hard skills, the technical skills,
Right.
but what separates you is probably going to be those qualities and the soft skills. So
Yeah, the technical skills are not as important for leaders as you move up the ranks. Really, the technical skills are more important, and as you're getting your career started, and you have to be well grounded in that. But as you grow, you really have to be more focused on the people and how you're creating an environment where people will follow the leader, and that's where the relational skills become more important.
yeah, good. That's perfect. Kind of moving into the next portion of professional development or personal development here, because you need to do that to be able to close some of those gaps to move throughout your career here. So,
Sure.
a couple things I've got written down here is seeking out feedback, engaging in volunteering in activities outside of your normal job, and uh, you know wanted you to talk a little bit about those kind of items. Why are they important, and how they can help somebody trying to develop personally or professionally to close the gap on some of those skills that they need to develop.
Well, one thing that comes to mind immediately is you can learn from other people. We have such a rich history in healthcare of having people that are, um, experts in what they do. We're the expert culture, both administratively and clinically. And so we kind of are used to being around experts, and a way to grow a broader perspective on your community or even how patients may be coming into the system who may not be experts in anything except, farming or,
Yeah.
some other thing that's really not part of what we teach and learn. And I think that your community service really expands your knowledge of the community that you serve. And you can learn a lot by getting active in the community. You can learn about communities that are in need of healthcare services, and you can get a different perspective. I mean, sometimes we don't look to other industries in healthcare. We are very focused on how we do things as a healthcare community. And that's what we know and understand. But, you go out and you look at businesses, and you go out and you look at nonprofits, and you look at other types of organizations and see how they function. And we can learn a lot from looking outside of healthcare. And it's not something we do often or as often as we could.
I 100% agree with that. Coming from a liberal arts school, that's kind of, their forte there of, you know, don't just learn one thing. How can you relate all these different aspects together? And, personally I serve on the board for one of a local soccer organization in my hometown. And, right now I'm on a committee for trying to build or develop an indoor facility. So learning a lot about financing and, what goes into the construction and things like that, right? It's not part of my day job now, but I'm developing that skill for
Sure.
future, potential roles or whatever may be needed there. So I completely agree, getting out in the community and trying to acquire those skills that you may not get in your day-to-day job somewhere else.
Well, and it's also service to the community.
It is,
Yeah,
yep.
which is, part of what it's a hallmark of healthcare administration is serving the community. And you're at a point in your career where being on a board, you could open doors for other people as well. And that's one of the things. I know I serve on a local nonprofit board and have been able to facilitate internships for grad students when sometimes that's turned into employment. And so part of that is really helping develop a networking presence too, that not only is good for you, the community, but then you can also benefit others through your connections that you might be making in the community. So a lot of different positive outcomes by serving in the community.
Yeah, that's great. Great. So moving into kind of the next piece here, continuous learning. Uh, you know, obviously we all know it's very, very important here. What, just real quickly, some of the resources that ACHE offers from a continuous learning, knowing that's one of their missions to educate,
Mhm.
what's out there? What can somebody go look for?
A bunch.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. You will not run out of opportunities. Well, first of all, I would always highlight Congress
Yes.
in Chicago each year. We were fortunate to be able to come back face to face this year, and we're looking forward to that. So Congress is 3, 4 days of continuing education. You can choose the types of topics that are important to you and get, basically all of your continuing education for recertification as a fellow, all in one setting. And so Congress is a place if you want to go. There are a lot of virtual opportunities with ACHE now, especially over the last couple of years. More virtual sessions have been created, and it's everything from finance to organizational behavior to change management to leadership. It's a wide variety. And so you could just open the web page on the ache.org and find a lot of different opportunities depending on where you want to grow.
Right.
There are clusters around the country, so you can go fun places and do
Fun
2
places.
days. Yeah. Well, that's why they make them in Vail and Orlando and things. You can take the family and get your CEs at the same time. So there are those types of workshops and things like that. And I would just say that Congress, there will be a virtual version of Congress this year
Yeah.
in April. So that might be something for those who can't make it to Congress and do the Chicago trip. So you've got all of that that's offered. And then there also, I noticed you have
Yeah.
a publication there,
So
Healthcare
this year.
Management. This is something that is a readable, different perspectives from practitioners and researchers that are provided and gives current data about what's going on, something that you might be able to relate to in your own world. So there are readings, there are kind of on the topic of what we're talking about, Career Edge is a product and a set of services at the Career Center for ACHE that has a lot of different assessments that you can take to self-discover, emotional intelligence assessments, personality assessments, the kinds of things that I think really help us be more aware of who we are as leaders and understand kind of the puzzle that we bring to the leadership styles that we have.
Yeah.
So the opportunities are great. And then iHEN, of course, we have local chapter activities.
Yep.
And iHEN always has a rich presence of a number of activities and offerings that we can get little bits of credit or no credit for continuing education. But yeah, I think between the local chapter and the national organization, ACHE is a wonderful resource. And again, I've mentioned I've partnered with them for years and benefited from a lot of the educational activities that are available there.
Great. Yeah. Great summary of all those resources there. To kind of close this up here, there's a lot of resources out there from ACHE for you to be able to develop a wide array of your skills, both technical hard skills, but then also those soft skills or the qualities that Sara was mentioning here. Great leaders don't only see forward, they're able to see around corners here. They're able to see what may be coming and prepare for that and prepare organizations for that. And the only way to do that is to stay in tune with what's going on in the industry and even outside industries, outside of healthcare as well, that may impact it. So, the other thing that got me thinking, as to be able to grow as a leader, you really, growth is not a comfortable thing. You need to be comfortable being uncomfortable, be vulnerable, and understand that you're putting yourself in a situation that may not feel good, such as leading a podcast. But you got to do it to grow and speak, and that's what it's all about. And it's fun to look back on it at the end of the day there. So
that would be another quality I would say, Ryan, is courage.
Courage
And
there we
being
go.
willing to take risk. Yeah, it's a courageous thing to do, to know that not everything you're going to do is a safe space.
Yeah.
And you may have to kind of put yourself out there to try new things as a leader. And you may not always be the most popular person, which takes courage to take on that role. So
Yep.
You're doing a great job with the podcast, but courage is a great attribute for leaders.
Yes.
We have to do unpopular things sometimes.
That's right. And that's kind of going into our last portion here of networking and the importance of that to for great leaders to kind of push their career forward and grow their career. Me personally, networking is not the greatest thing for me. I didn't like it when I was a student. And I was like, why do I got to do this? Why can't I just let my work speak for itself? But talk to me a little bit about the importance of networking and what role it plays in advancing one's career.
It's priceless.
Yes.
Yes, it is. And I think we've given networking a bad rap by calling it networking.
I don't like the word.
Yeah, I think it's just brought a connotation in and of the word itself. Really, I talk about relationship development because really what you're doing is just developing relationships which can be mutually beneficial over time, or they just might be nice people that you want to spend time with. And I know it's hard. We're stretched for time right now. And our social settings are kind of restricted in many ways. So it's a little different now. We're doing more virtual networking, but it's critically important. I mean, I would not be where I am today, nor would I have had any of the jobs that I had I not had relationships with individuals. And it wasn't that I asked for those jobs. It's a matter of you become a known entity in communities when you're active in networking opportunities. When you're on a board, you're networking. You don't really think of it in that term. We always think of going to an event and shaking hands and getting business cards. Networking is about what you do every day and how are you showing up and talking with other people. What soccer board are you on? I'm on a community board for homeless medical and dental services. And so the people that I work with on the board within the organization, that's networking. Yep. So if we didn't put this label on it, I think we would all be recognizing that we actually network all the time. Yeah. And the value of it is it connects you to other people that you may be able to help at some point, or they may be able to help you. Or again, it could just be a great group of people that you build relationships with for the better good of your organization or the community. And there's great value in that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, finding sometimes when you're doing that relationship management or relationship building, you'll find somebody that you connect with a little bit as well, which can always be valuable because that can kind of turn into a mentor-mentee relationship there. Me personally, I've found, mentorship to be extremely helpful. Being a young early careerist, somebody in a more senior leadership role, being able to help guide me and question me. They're not telling me what to do, but they're helping me process thoughts in the way I think. Mm-hmm. And now, getting 5 years into my career, I'm starting to accumulate some mentees of my own. And now, being able to help guide them, and it also teaches me more about myself, and right. And you get a lot of benefit out of that as well. So. Mm-hmm.
I call that reverse mentoring.
Okay.
Where I have a group of 30-somethings in my office, and they're teaching me things all the time. And, I'll share wisdoms, and at the same time, I learn from them as well. And I think that there is value in having both someone who's not as far along as you are in your career, because they're asking questions that you may have forgotten to ask for a while. Yep. And then having someone, you mentioned someone questioning you instead of telling you, that's really good coaching, to be asking questions so you can think through things on your own. And there's value in having both someone who's not as far along as you are to ask questions that you may have lost sight of, and then someone who's more seasoned who can ask you questions from a point of wisdom, not curiosity. So both wisdom and curiosity can come from the mentor and mentee relationships.
That's good. Yeah. And I believe ACHE has like a mentoring program, right? Mm-hmm. They can set you up. So you don't only have to rely on you personally doing it. You can collaborate with ACHE, and they'll match you up with somebody and try to find somebody that may be a good fit with you.
Yes, they will. That's true. And that's you can just sign up and say you're interested in what type of individual you're looking for, and they will make that match for you. There are a number of senior leaders and mid-careerists that are in that mentoring program.
Good. That's good. Well, one final question for you before we close out here. Especially in today's world, how do you manage your reputation through self-promotion and, thinking virtual networking and maintaining a visibility across your colleagues?
Well, you can do podcasts.
Yeah. What do you know?
So Your reputation is really important. Your branding every time you are in front of someone, really, your brand speaks for you. And I think that as you get started in a career, one of the things that I've discovered over time, and there was a gentleman, Nick Tejeda, who was from, he's been a speaker for ACHE a number of times. And I remember Nick, when he was first a CEO at like the age of 28, or
Yeah.
something like that. And I was always struck by something he said about the way he handled himself because he just wanted to change the world. And he recognized that he still had a lot to learn. And I go back to humility. And as you begin to develop your brand, being humble enough to know that you might be really smart, but you still have a lot to learn, and relying on others to just be patient. Patience is one of the things I think is most challenging for early careerists because we want it to happen now, and we want it to happen yesterday, and we want it to happen a long time ago, but I'm still waiting. And so being patient and humble and recognizing that you might really have a lot of talent and yet you might still have some things to learn. And so a key skill to develop at this point is listening. We don't really talk about that a lot as leaders, and I think listening to learn as you're growing is extremely important. You'll pick up a lot of things if you listen and then ask questions and learn. So I think that will help your reputation and your brand if you're interested. If you think about people that listen well, you kind of feel good, when someone listens to you. So if you're the listener, you're going to be impacting other people in a positive way. And so branding and self-promotion, all that, self-promotion, you kind of have to get out there and do things like you're doing right now. And those are the opportunities that we need to look for and take advantage of, as I mentioned earlier, in your career path.
Correct.
But at the same time, being humble in listening so that you're not trying to rush the process. And the unfortunate thing is, if you do succeed at a very young age and you're moving up the ladder very quickly, you're going to have to battle that perception that you're too young to be where you are. And that is a time to surround yourself with strong mentors who can support you through that time and that process. And ACHE has executive coaching. I'm a member of the executive coaching team for ACHE, as well as a number of other highly qualified coaches. And that's a time perhaps to reach out and look for some coaching, to have someone outside your organization who can listen and be a sounding board for you as well. And that was a long answer, but self-promotion is important, but doing it in a way that shows humility and finding that balance, especially if you're moving quickly through a system and realize you don't have a lot of experience, but you're really quickly moving into these positions of higher visibility. That's a real challenge, and I think having someone walk alongside you and be a sounding board can be a real advantage.
That's excellent insight. Patience is key.
Yes.
And it's not always everybody's strong suit. So, well, good, great. This has been absolutely terrific and very insightful talking with you. I know I've personally taken a few nuggets out of here that I'll carry with me as I continue along my leadership journey here. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you're very busy. So
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's always nice to be able to speak with iHEN members and those that are interested in ACHE, as well as just professionals, that we share this love for the work that we do and the patients that we serve. And so it's my pleasure to be here.
Great. Yeah, that's great. Appreciate hearing that. And we look forward to having you again maybe sometime in the future here.
Great.
So
I welcome it.
great. Before I close, I would like to thank our sponsors again here because they are what helps make this all happen for us. So our premier sponsor, Ice Miller, our platinum sponsor, Heapy, and our gold sponsors, Cat Sapper and Miller, Innov Cornerstone, and Arc Design. So thank you all for tuning in and taking in some of this content here. We would love your feedback. Feel free to share any comments that you may have, any areas that we could improve, or future topics that you may be interested in hearing. You can send that to us on our social media channels or on our website, sending an email to what's listed up there, or however else you like to connect with us. So please send in those suggestions for us. Also, please go out to our website, indianahen.org, and you can see some of our future programs that we have coming up here in 2020. We've got a lot of great educational items that will be conducted over the course of the year here. Some may be virtual, some may be in person, but thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at the next podcast. Thanks.